Welcome. This is Keiler Roberts. I am creating this video for my students. It is a lecture, um, and I am focusing this one on a project that I did called Simple Wardrobe, and it was the project that took place between 10 years of painting, which I was trying to quit over and over and over again. But it was before I sort of even knew anything about alternative or indie comics, and this project sort of was the bridge. I didn't know it was a bridge at the time. I just knew it was something that I got excited enough to do, so I was able to sort of stop painting because I couldn't quit painting without having something exciting to do with my time that was creative and felt like work that I just wanted to be engaged in. So partly I became disenchanted with painting just because I didn't like the context. I didn't like sort of the world of galleries and the critiques around painting, the conversations around it, the way it referenced itself so much. It didn't have enough to do with sort of my everyday life, and it seemed to only deal with like such a small number of people. People who are really into painting are often people with degrees in art. It's a very specialized small group of people. And I wanted to do something, I don't know, just I wanted to have different conversations around what I was doing. So I came up with this idea where I would replace all my manufactured clothing with homemade clothes. And people were making blogs around projects at the time. It was sort of there was that cooking blog, Julie and Julia, and a movie was made about it where a woman named Julie made all of Julia Child's recipes and blogged about it. And so I was using that as kind of a inspiration point. And why on earth would I decide to sew my clothes? There's no good reason for that. I was interested in sewing. I was interested in making things, and I don't know. I guess I was frustrated with like the clothes that were available. And clothes have a lot to do with identity and stuff, but it wasn't a political project. I wasn't trying to save the environment. It ended up being like a really wasteful project in a lot of ways. But it was, I don't know, it was a way for me to do something that was for myself, but that might be interesting to share. And so it was very personal. It wasn't like I was making a painting, which would turn into like a very expensive object that a collector would buy. It was more like I'm just making a shirt for myself and I'll wear it and I'll have that direct relationship with it and people will see it as they see me out and about in the world and they can read about it in my on my blog. So this project, Simple Wardrobe, and another blog I did, which was Observation and Affection, were both on Blogspot, and they were my transition. Off to the right here, it's a screenshot from Observation and Affection, which is still up. Simple Wardrobe, the blog still exists, but it's private. But the images that I'm going to show you are mostly from that blog. Observation and Affection was a combination of just images that I made, I guess illustrations or drawings or paintings or whatever, photographs that I took, all varying in terms of style, combined with entries from my journal that I sort of rewrote very neatly and photographed. And then that's a painting that I did on the left and a panel from my comics that was an early comic. And here's a screenshot of more of the blog so you can see the header. And one of my last posts was a 2011 hand-knit variegated wool sweater. So in the very beginning of the blog, I wasn't showing my face, partly just to zoom in on the clothes, but also, I don't know, it just seemed funnier to always have like just my body. And this was the first pair of jeans that I made. I had sewn before this, but when I made jeans, this was the thing that really gave me the idea for the whole blog. It was like, if I can make jeans, I must be able to make everything, because what could be harder than jeans? It turns out a lot of things are harder than jeans, but I I was it felt really powerful to be able to make jeans because, like a lot of people, I had had a hard time finding jeans that fit just right and that I liked the pockets of. I could make pockets as big as I wanted and as wide spaced as I wanted and as low as I wanted, all these things. Um, that felt like a superpower because when you shop and shop and shop and can't find jeans that are long enough or that fit just right, it can seem like an impossible problem to solve. All right. So here is a pair of shorts that I made from a very old pattern. They're from I don't know when, 60s maybe. Vintage patterns always have like the most amazing illustrations on them, and so I was a sucker making all these things that these shorts were completely unwearable. They sort of worked from the back, but they had these big creases on the front because they weren't fitted just right. And then eventually I learned to make shorts, and these represent stylistically sort of what I was after, like sort of unusual patterns. I really liked the little edging on the pockets. I loved having front pockets with seams instead of a hidden pocket, a patch pocket. It was really, I don't know, it was fun to play around. And so I would make something like this or the initial pair of jeans. Early on, I felt like really encouraged. But what ended up happening is I made a lot of, horrible horrible clothes that is sort of one mistake after another. This was a very crude illustration that I did to talk about crotch depth, which is a sewing term. You sit down and measure from your waist to your seat, and that measurement, the vertical crotch depth, is something that is used in fitting pants patterns. And obviously it's a funny term. So I made jokes on the blog about how one goes about measuring crotch depth and how it applies to sewing and so forth. The whole, the I was earnestly trying to make clothes that I liked, but I also was really enjoying the process of combining pictures and text and being funny, which is something that I, try to do with comics, but I was able to do it on the blog to some extent. All right, so this shirt, you can see how messed up the collar is. Like the V-neck is off center and it's lumpy, and there are little pleats in the fabric. I had cut up a bigger t-shirt and then custom made this more fitted one with like little sleeves and everything. But the neckline is just really, really hard. It's really hard to make a good looking V-neck t-shirt, and it's really hard to do a lot of the things that seem really simple and basic. Like you can go to a store and buy a very basic t-shirt for almost nothing. But it's really, really hard to sew them perfectly. But I love this idea of taking sort of an old t-shirt, especially like old free t-shirts with like political slogans or something that's time-based that you wouldn't use anymore, and sort of like repurposing them. And I love how weird the patterns on a t-shirt look when they're sort of cut into and misplaced. That's an aesthetic that I still am playing around with. I'm making shirts now that just are sort of more about recycling than anything else. All right, so early on in the project, like I didn't have the technical skills to pull this off perfectly, but this was sort of like the look I was going for. But you'll see how sidetracked I became in this very next slide. This is a pattern that looked really cute on the picture, but I made terrible choices with color and fabric type. So it looks ridiculous, and so I made a background that was just as corny, sort of bad Photoshop skills to go with my bad sewing skills, and that was part of the blog was just I don't know, like means of expression, not just straightforward like let's sew this thing and show what happened. This dress I also like I actually really like this dress, but I would never wear it. It's so it's a hard style to pull off. But it's made out of old sheets for the red and then an old vintage pillowcase that was hand embroidered of the little squirrels. Okay, so I got really into taking photographs as backgrounds and then collaging myself into the background. So I was photographing myself, the clothing, indoors in my studio, which was my bedroom at the time, and then photographing backgrounds separately. And so this one looked like a really country, it turned out to be a very country styled blouse. And so I got this petting zoo background. And this one too. Took a picture of myself and then the barn separately. And one of the things that I really like is like how the scale and the proportions between myself, the foreground and the background are just like off enough so that it feels kind of uncomfortable. And maybe the lighting isn't totally consistent. These are the same things that I played around in painting, and then I still like to explore in comics. So visual characteristics are the same. This also is a blouse that I really kind of loved as an object, but I never felt right wearing it. This is more my speed. I like the style of this stuff, but it wasn't like the zipper's not very well done. Anybody who sews can spot, problems with my technique. All right. This is my adorable dog, Crookie. She also has she was a subject of my paintings, was part of the blog, and has certainly been a huge character in my comics. And I made a couple little things for her, a rain jacket out of a plastic tablecloth fabric, and this, I don't know what, impractical dog sweater. Okay, so having fun with the blog, I made this apron for my dad, which has a little pocket for an iPad and 3 pockets for beer. This is another example of a dress that like pretty much turned out in terms of like it's sewn well, but it photographed all right. Like I think it looks okay in this picture, but it doesn't move right. Sewing patterns often have this. They have methods of sort of cheating, and so it doesn't seem real clothes when you're actually wearing it. Like this waistband, there are so many patterns that just like have a sash that you sew, and then you tie it around the waist, and then you don't have to do complicated shaping and stuff. But it moves, and then it looks awkward, and there's no substitute for having like a really well shaped garment. I was written about in Fiber Arts magazine in 2009 by Sharon Pfeiffer, and it was I don't know. It was really fun to be in a magazine that like I'm not a fiber artist. It was it was astonishing that I was included in this. There was a letter to the editor complaining about my blog and how I was making such boring, dull clothes, and how could they waste the time writing about me when I'm making a bunch of gray dresses, um, because I don't have like the aesthetic vision of your typical fiber artist. Okay, so this is the best dress I made. I really did. Did start with a commercial pattern, but I changed it dramatically, and it's just the right shape. You can see sort of the prototype version on the left, and then what I came up with. Um, that's as good as it ever got. I also started knitting and made a bunch of sweaters um, to go with, everything else. And I learned how to crochet. Like this sweater has a crocheted edging. I don't know what to say about it. Another outfit. I got more into props, backgrounds, and this series takes place at the Renaissance Fair in Bristol, which is something that I've used as backgrounds for my comics too. Um, so just this playing around with, I don't know, what's in the foreground, what's in the background while something else is going on. The subject was the clothing. The subject of this is this conversation I'm having with my friend. But the background is where the actual like action is. This was from Legoland. I picked that background for this turtleneck because of the grid. That's another pair of jeans I made. Okay, and this one, Millennium Park. I started showing my face at one point. Um, this tank top has like an elastic edge. I got better at figuring out how to make edges on knits and how to hem them. I got a serger, of course. Okay, so this is a blouse and shorts that I made. This is not a picture that I used for the blog, but it's actually a really good picture in terms of showing like just how awkward and stupid a lot of the things turned out to be. They look really cute in illustrations. They look cute when photographed from certain angles. But more and more, I ended up feeling like I was wearing a costume when I would wear these things. Like nobody dresses like this, and I don't like people looking at me really in public. I never wanted to be like the focal point. So I was actually trying to make clothes for the most part that would just sort of like help me fit in and be comfortable, but that I just kept making decisions, bad visual decisions. That led to things like this. And part of it is I don't have the ability to look at a pattern and look at fabric and imagine what the results are going to be. And that is an essential skill for sewing. I don't, and printmaking, like I can't tell what this list of ingredients is going to turn out to be. Okay, so one of the most challenging projects that I did was a down coat. Um, and it's lumpy and sort of awkward, but it was warm and it was so complicated to make. The whole thing has an exterior and a lining, but it also has like an interior jacket made out of polar fleece, and then it's, stuffed with down, and of course there's interior seams that keep the down like from all just falling to the bottom. It's sort of quilted. And then this, I think, was an awesome idea that I had. I took the cuffs off of really warm wool socks and sewed them into the wrists so that it has these like really warm, wonderful cuffs. And then the hood was lined with fake fur. But the zipper, I don't know, it didn't stay up perfectly. I don't know. It was just like everything else. Like it photographed like sort of all right, but then, there were a lot of problems with it that were sort of hidden. Towards, I don't know, the middle of the project, I don't know, I was always playing around with different types of shirts, knit shirts, blouses. I made a lot of skirts. I got into color blocking a little bit here. Vests, vests are hard to wear, but they do solve a lot of problems. And another knit top and a denim skirt. This is an example of, I don't know what it is, just one more outfit that sort of works. It was made out of an old large t-shirt that I cut into a tank top and then, put edging on, and I liked that sort of reuse. These pants, jeans I made from another type of pattern. They looked pretty normal. I felt like I wasn't wearing a costume here. I felt like I was wearing real clothes. I had a lot of fun drawing designs in my sketchbook. I really started keeping a sketchbook during this project that I never had before, and this actually, I don't know, it's sort of the basis of my drawing style for comics. Like, if you, when I was just trying to draw a pure description of the clothes that would just show, how they would be constructed and what they would look like without any stylistic um, embellishments. That was the drawing style for this project, and that is what I try to do with comics. I try to describe the scene and draw the essential bits of information that need to come through to communicate, so you can like read the drawings in comics the same way you would read, these kind of clothing um, drawings. And this is one of the best, I don't know, like in terms of sewing strategies, things that I came up with. Again, hemming knits, like creating an attractive edge for knits. Anybody who does this knows how difficult it is. And I came up with this edging, which, I don't know, I was happy with it. But it's like the project. I mean, this was days and days and days of work and experimenting with so many things and so many shirts, and it looks like nothing. It's so much easier to just go and like buy something that looks okay. I also crocheted this Afghan. There were a few home projects that I did during the course of the blog, and I don't know, this was more about aesthetics, coming up with a scheme of colors that made me feel good. And this is one sweater that I still wear. I have gotten rid of almost everything I created. I made hundreds of everything: blouses, tank tops, t-shirts, pants, skirts, and sweaters. I even got rid of some of my sweaters, but I kept this one. And I did get a knitting machine at one point that is, it's not something that you plug in, but it does make it quick to knit. And so I hand knit the very colorful part, but machine knit the rest. And then you assemble the pieces, and then that brought me to comics. So part of what I keep from the Simple Wardrobe blog is it has made me more aware of clothing, and I've gotten better at drawing it. And I love drawing bodies, and something that I don't know, it's still about me in certain ways. The whole clothing project was about centering experience through yourself. Yeah, I don't know. I also had the experience of spending years and years and years on something that pretty much failed in the end. Um, I was able to give up painting, which I've sort of returned to now, and I was able to let go of something when it turned out not to work, which I think is something really important in all types of artwork, is sort of knowing when to do something else and when to change and how to look at what was working for you and what wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. Quitting something feels better than almost anything else.